What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Yours Truly podcast. Today, I'm delighted to have Cassidy VanderKamp with me here today in the Yours Truly virtual studio. Had a conversation with Cassidy probably about a year ago. I interviewed several women that are in this corner of the internet, and she was one of them. She has been a part of this movement, this thing for a long time, well before I was involved. And we had a conversation about that. She has her own YouTube channel where she has done kind of cultural evaluations on things like Taylor Swift and Jordan Peterson and many other figures. She has a background in filmmaking and lives in Europe, in the Netherlands, I believe. We'll have to see. I may have gotten that wrong. I'm doing this off the cuff here, but so she has helped run a few festivals related to this corner of the internet, related to the estuary movement, creating conversation space that's kind of was spearheaded by Paul VanderKlay and John Van Donk on the West Coast here in the States. And they're in a third or fourth, fifth iteration of their festival called the Breakwater Festival. Obviously, I'm not like super know all the details, but I am well aware of what they've been doing, and how I followed along to some of the conversations that they did about their festival last year, and am aware of some of their earlier ones where Paul VanderKlay attended and spoke. And so this year, she's kind of making the rounds on some of the this little corner of the internet podcast channel things, and she asked if she'd come on and talk about it. So we're going to do that today. Before we go on, don't forget to like for the algo, subscribe for the vanity metrics. And if you want to help support this channel financially, you can become a YouTube channel member. The link to that will be in the description. So today I'm glad to help be a part of supporting something that has, ultimately encouraged and supported me, this corner of the internet, kind of downstream from the Jordan Peterson phenomenon and Paul VanderKlay's cultural analysis and synthesis and kind of pastoral spirit related to the estuary movement of in-person conversation in a disembodied world, in a disintegrated relational in places of deep meaning, has been meaningful in my life in helping reconstruct and rebuild meaningful connection, even starting in this digital space as it spills out into events like this, the Breakwater Festival in Europe. So today I'll be talking to Cassidy, learning about their event. I've watched a little bit from some of her other conversations on other channels. So you can check those out. But if this is the first time you're hearing about it, hang on and listen and hear what she's doing over there, and see if it's something you might know, somebody who might be interested in attending. You could share this with if you've got friends over there, or if you're a listener from Europe and you haven't kind of been in contact with some of this little corner of the internet, or you're just randomly finding this, check out what they're doing at the Breakwater Festival. So this is going to be good. And without any further delay, let's get into it today.
Hi, this is Christian Baxter, and you're listening to Yours Truly, a place we go to think out loud.
Rolling. All right. So, Cassidy, you reached out. I know you've already been on Grail Country and on Lucas's boss's channel. I don't know if you've been on anybody else's.
I'm doing the TLC circuit right now.
Well, I think that's cool. When I was thinking a year ago or something, it's almost getting closer to a year and a half, 2 years ago. The way these things naturally progress, like when things grow, and you're hoping that things don't maybe scale, but that they grow at the speed at which is human, and the speed that's which natural, taking into account this kind of digital thing we've got where a lot of it was birthed. But, you know, in the intro, I kind of outlined a little bit of where you're coming from, what you're doing, just off the top of my head, the best I could articulate. But I thought, you know, I think I was listening to some of the other conversations, but really for you, like, why is doing these conferences or downstream from kind of the estuary movement related to Paul VanderKlay and John Van Donk and this corner of the internet, why is it so important to you?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's personal reasons and then there's sort of like practical reasons. I mean, the personal reasons are...
Let's start with the personal.
Yeah, I mean, the personal
Everyone knows the practical.
Yeah, well, we know it, but sometimes like...
We'll say it.
Yeah.
Crowdfunding.
In a different way.
Link in the description.
But I mean, like personally, the introduction to estuary, and even before we had a name for it, whatever the spirit is that came from Paul VanderKlay's randos and the conversations that we've been able to have with each other has just been like life-changing for me. I mean, at the beginning, it was just all of a sudden I'm having all these questions, trying to figure out how to have these conversations, particularly in churches, and trying to figure out how to bridge that sort of secular world and the non-secular world. And yeah, this sort of Paul comes around and kind of does that and brings us together to do that. And it's really exciting. And then, you know, how many years down the line, it's like I've met my husband through Bridges of Meaning. It's made me move countries. I have children because of meeting my husband and doing this. And I think sort of probably the biggest impact, but also sort of the smallest impact, like my faith has been impacted, where I started non-denominational evangelical, kind of as modern as you can go. And now I'm here participating in the Eastern Orthodox tradition, and then chrismated into the church. And it's just been such a beautiful journey to see how having these types of conversations have helped me grow and get to a place where I could very peacefully make a transition to something different and go deeper in my faith. And just the ways that it's made the conversations that I have in my life much more peaceful, much more people focused, and a lot less sort of anxiety driven. And that's just priceless. And as much as I said this on Lucas's channel, but I'll say it again here, like as much as I don't think that I personally need estuary as much as I did 5 years ago, you know, 7 years ago, whatever it was when we started this, I just want to see it keep going to help people who were like I was a long time ago, trying to find that healthy way to engage in these questions. And so I want to see estuary scale and grow. And like you said, in a really organic grassroots way. One of our organization partners in the festival, David, he talks about us and the organization growing at the speed of relationships. Mm-hmm. And I think that makes a lot of sense of what estuary is, particularly of how relational it is, but really taking that time of like growing, not this like status rocket thing, but really growing as we can shape and build these relationships. So there's
what were some of the questions that you were wrestling with 6-7 years ago that were creating anxiety, that this was helpful, this estuary, and say a little bit about if the random possibility that someone that doesn't know what estuary is that's watching my channel.
Sure.
Like those two things.
Yeah. So, well, before that, I went through this kind of, I guess you can call it a deconstruction phase. That word is so loaded, but basically some stage where I didn't lose my faith, but was having deep questions about it and doubts about it, and kind of trying to say, okay, I believe this thing, but do I have any right to? Is that really what I should be believing? And so went through this period, and long story short, came back to Christianity, said, okay, I think that I feel confident in continuing to call myself a Christian. I think that's a good value, and trying to figure out how do I then integrate that as I go forward, and really getting back involved in church participation really regularly. And I say it like it's going through the looking glass of like, I'm entering back into a world that I grew up in, but all of a sudden it looks different to me because of what I've seen on this journey that I've gone through in the last 3 to 5 years before this. And so that was a real struggle of like, I believe this thing that I'm part of. I don't think that like this participation that I'm in is necessarily wrong, but there's something kind of not settling right about re-entering the participation because of everything that I've seen before, and trying to kind of wrestle with those questions of how do
So
I.
did the questions come from the internet or from where you were on like the West Coast, like close to San Francisco, I think, and if I understand it,
Yeah.
where did
Well,
the
so
question, and then how did you find answer, or how did this work in helping you deal with those questions?
Yeah, well, it really came in stages, right? So I grew up in Arizona in a sort of, I would say, conservative Christian bubble. Very happy, healthy home. Not anything sort of, I would say, too restrictive, but it was very samey. Like everywhere you go, kind of people thought the same thing, believed the same things, those sorts of things. And so when I moved to the Bay Area, you are, because I lived in Oakland for 3.5 years, 4 years almost. So you move to this very progressive, very left-leaning city. You're constantly connecting with people who think differently than you, and I just loved it. And I was grateful because I didn't run into too many people who were very antagonistic when they found out that I was not sort of what you would expect someone from the Bay Area to be like. I coming from Arizona, being more conservative leaning, but there was these sort of challenges and these questions, and I opened myself up to having conversations with people who didn't believe what I believed, but not in a way to like convert them, but just to like really try to understand where they came from. And it actually ended up making me stronger in my faith, where all of a sudden it was making me think about things I'd never thought about. And it was helping me kind of dig deeper into those things. And so I really enjoyed what was happening by just having these conversations with no intention of like conversion, but just to really try to understand what other people
Was that happening in Estuary? When did that come into play?
No, Estuary was not even like on the map. That was back in 2016 or no, not 2016, 2014 probably.
Yeah.
So this was just me sitting in restaurants, and bars and university classrooms, just being engaged with people who thought differently than I did. And I just really enjoyed it. And then when I did a year abroad in Australia, I kind of just took that mindset with me of like, hey, I'm just going to keep talking to people and see where it goes. And that was sort of my first brush with the new atheism, right? I had a friend who, he gave me a Christopher Hitchens book. I think he's trying to deconvert me.
Hitch slap.
Yeah, I got hitch slapped. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it was just interesting because I remember getting the book and there was this sort of fear that washed over me. What was sort of like, there could be something in this book that makes me believe that I'm wrong about everything that I said I believed. And you can't undo that. If you find something like that, you can't undo that. But there was this, right, 3 seconds later, it's like, well, if I'm that scared to read it, I probably should. And so I think I read it within like 2 weeks and stuff. And it didn't change my mind about Christianity, but it certainly posed certain questions of like, I was just surprised how much I liked Christopher Hitchens, if that makes any sense, where you kind of, the expectation is I'm supposed to hate the guy, right? Because he's against everything that I hold most sacred. But I actually just thought he was very witty. And even some of the sort of scathing things he said about my people, I was just like, oh, that's a good one, or even some of the criticisms that he had that I agreed with. And there was sort of this question of like, how do you make sense of those things? And it just got me thinking about things.
So you have like this kind of cultural pluralistic experience.
Yeah.
And then you have the more like direct attack of your foundation of your faith.
Sure.
And even if it didn't go away, that's a lot, of new. And how do I process this? And who do I talk to? How do I even have the conversation I'm looking for? And so did you find that through kind of Paul's synthesis of some of Peterson's stuff and other people in the corner stuff? Like, was that helping you initially? Was that kind of the initial thing that was helping you with was his stuff?
Well, it was a slow burn, right? Because the thing that was happening in conjunction with sort of religious deconstruction was a political deconstruction. Because I was abroad when Donald Trump won the 2016 presidency. That's when I was in Australia. And I remember just sitting there in my little house that I was renting, watching all of the states go, and you see Florida flip and you realize, oh, Trump's going to be president. And I am not a very political person, I would say. I have gained a certain respect and interest in politics from this journey, but I would not say I'm hyper political. But I just remember thinking, whoa, okay, we've been told again and again and again, there's no way Trump could be president. There's no way Trump could be president. And I just believed it hook, line, and sinker. Like, I just didn't even question it. I was like, yeah, of course. But he's president. There he is. And so it just opened the door of like, okay, well, what else am I just believing without thinking it through? That's also not true. And so it kind of went into this, sort of like YouTube spiral of like trying to figure out how do I make sense of this? So I went through a phase of like the apologetics phase where I was looking at a lot of these sort of debates and things, trying to just take it in, understand what was going on there. There were certainly certain culture war channels like the Daily Wire and things that I was watching, and mostly to get a little bit of a different perspective, because I was in such a, I grew up in conservative circles, but now I'm surrounded by very left-leaning politics, left-leaning beliefs, very progressive sort of ideas. And so having some of that counter to kind of really say, okay, what's going on? I didn't necessarily love all of the ways they went about those conversations.
Sure.
But there was something about them that said, okay, well, I can tolerate some of these very aggressive left-leaning people who have passionate ideas. I should be able to do the same for the right-leaning. But eventually it got to the point where it was sort of like the outrage culture part of it was something I wasn't really happy about. And I wasn't happy about what it was doing to me, because it made me more prone to get into the outrage when I didn't really want to be that. I didn't think that was something that was good to feed. And so as Paul came in, it kind of was this breath of fresh air, because it was like, oh, hey, there's this guy and he's talking about things, but and he's connecting this church world and these, pop culture things and philosophy, and he's just thinking through out loud. And I just found that really interesting. And then when I found the randos conversations, that's what really hooked me, because I'm just really interested in people. I find them so fascinating. I love their stories. And so the fact that he just sits and talks to people nobody knows and tells their stories, that was really beautiful. And so I think for me, that really helped to I think it helped me realize too, I'm not alone in this. Because when I started coming back into church, I'm having these questions, and I worked in comedy. So I was having these really beautiful conversations in like comedy clubs and bars with these people who are supposed to be these anti-religious, secular, like the enemy, right? But they're just having, and I'm not prompting them, they're just coming naturally, and we're having these beautiful, honest conversations. And it's like, why can't we have this in church or church adjacent? And so I would talk about that of like, how can we have these conversations where we can just really hear what other people are saying without the sense of a need to evangelize? And the common response was like, that's really great, but we don't want to muddy the truth. And that was really hard for me to swallow, because I understood it. But I also felt like, hey, maybe the truth is a bit more robust than we're giving it credit. I don't know.
Well, I mean, to take it on to my kind of, even the title of this podcast, Yours Truly, is dealing with truth, not that your truth is your truth and my truth is my truth,
right.
But there is a reality to like, everyone has had an experience,
right?
And it's like, and it informs you and it does this stuff. Now, can we say that there is metaphysical truth and there is absolute belief truth? Yeah, but there's like, to use old Peugeot's fractal, like the fractal nature of this, like there's fractals of like confession of confess to a priest, confess to a friend, confess to a spouse, confess to, to a group of people, or a church confession, like there's these things. And with conversation and dealing with the truth, well, like, did this truly happen to you? Something truly happened. And I had this experience where I watched all the stuff online and I read The New Atheists, and then Donald Trump wins. And I'm like, this truly happened. This is a part of something true that happened in the world. And I have to now deal with that truth. And I think and so having a conversation around truth that way was probably not, well, we need to make sure that you share the gospel. It's like, well, I'm not afraid to talk to somebody about Jesus, but there's this whole other, this other side of epistemology related to truth about, and it's like, there's kind of this performance thing that comes on. It's like, oh no, I've got to now put on my Christian soldier. It becomes this performance thing where you're talking about in the bars where I'm just talking to a person. Yeah. How do we capture that and create, and I guess with like, explain what estuary is. Like, how does estuary capture something like that?
So how I describe estuary is sort of this kind of movement where we're trying to create neutral spaces where people from all walks of life can come together and have honest conversations about meaning questions, like big and small. And so it's really about trying to figure out how do we make a space where we can come together and deal with these personal truths that we have, not to placate them and say, just like you said, your truth is your truth, my truth is my truth. It's like kind of challenging ourselves to say, hey, we have these differing things. Why is that? And, how do we think out loud and think through these things? And my friend Valerie, she says, I think the spirit of it is very much sort of intellectual hospitality, like this practice in trying to be hospitable to sort of someone who thinks differently than you. And I just think that's really beautiful.
Yeah, it is. What happened when I first decided to play on the internet, because the thing that was going on for me was this was basically a conversation inside of my head. Yeah. For me, it was almost 7 years inside my head, just with, I'm in a little town and I'm not talking to anybody. I'm kind of had dealt with something I was very ashamed of, and I was trying to process that.
Yeah.
And so, and then it spilled into the digital space. I did a speed rando with Paul, and I kind of just, there was something else that happened. I saw one of his first it was one of the first times he kind of played with a little bit with doing his own estuary stuff on the internet, where he was like, there'd be 10 people after his live stream on Friday, and they were just talking. It wasn't official digital estuary, but you were on it actually. And because I have a picture of it pinned on my tweet right now of that first conversation. I was like looking at it today. I was like, oh, there's Cassidy. And I was like, what is this? There's people, and they all kind of are talking about it. It is a type of intellectual hospitality that's not in the university systems. That's a result of all this digital pluralism, all this stuff like assaulting our minds and our souls. And so I felt like, okay, I'm actually kind of starting to touch have a conversation with something that had existed in my mind for 7 years. And now, okay, I'm having the conversation, but with, I guess, Van Donk and Paul, and what you're doing specifically is it can't just stay on the internet. Like the things happened on the internet or through media. And then you watch these more personal, like the randos with Paul, people without platforms, people just talking about this same kind of stuff happening. And you're like, oh, and then it started to take place, I guess, on like the Discords, like Bridges of Meaning Discord, and you met your husband on there, and like
not planned, by the way. It was not trolling Discord to find a husband, but
it is planned in a sense. Like I'm looking, I'm open to that, not like maybe intentional, but then so that happens, and now we realize there have been 4 or 5 estuary-ish conferences in the States. How many estuary, which all is that is to say that it needed to spill into embodied realities.
Yeah.
And then the estuary movement at the same time was like small groups of these conversations happening locally.
Yeah.
So you weren't just watching Paul synthesize culture. You were beginning to do that, hopefully, in real life. And then, so the conferences, what part did that play? And you've now done, how many have you done?
This will be our 4th. So our 4th festival, but we've also done a small German-speaking event last March, and then we did the estuary tour with Paul. So we've done a couple other things, but this will be our 4th official estuary festival.
So that's like
3-day thing.
6, but kind of 4 breakwaters. Is that what you're saying?
So, yeah, they're all breakwater events, but 4 breakwater festivals, 1 breakwater exchange, which is basically a one day event that is similar to the festival where we bring speakers and we do estuaries, but it's targeted at the local communities in the local languages. And then we did the estuary tour, which was just something special extra that we did, where we went to the Netherlands, Germany, and the UK, and we were able to do private dinners with estuary leaders to understand the problems that were happening, the challenges that they were having the positive things that were happening in each of the places, and then also allow Paul to come and participate in estuary within
what were some of the things the estuary leaders were dealing with?
It's funny, each country has a different problem. So the Netherlands were in sort of this how would you say it, baby stage where the movement is starting. There's some regular meetings going, but we're trying to figure out how do we have traction, how do we keep it going, and how do we combine efforts to make it sort of whole in unison so that it's not falling too much on one person, it gets too discouraged. For Germany, they have a really healthy, thriving estuary, and they're thinking about how do we expand and grow? How do we make more than just one? How do we start breaking off and making these natural places to be even more localized? And the UK, they have a lot of different estuaries all over, but how to have that consistency and that frequency.
Who are some of those leaders? I know is Teo, and then like Charlie.
Yeah, so
Stefan. I guess Stefan's.
Stefan, I definitely is super involved. I think Matthias and David kind of are the main two that founded it and started it. But there's, you'd have to talk to them to see who's sort of taken leadership. But it's definitely grown. And then Aaron here in the Netherlands, Aaron van Os, him and his brother, and Gert-Jan and Florian from Zin Centraal. They've kind of band together to do one in Utrecht. But before that, Diego was doing one in Teal for a while. He's taking a break right now because he just had a baby. So good on him. Take a break, get used to that family life. And then there's some talks about other people in different places that have had little ones. But yeah, it's been more, small and focused, which is a good thing to start. And then, the UK has a bunch of them. Teo is the one leading it in London, and he has a couple, but we had the largest group of estuary leaders in the UK because they came from all over, and it was just lovely to talk to them. But cool. We have all the information for all of the active estuaries that we've connected with on our Breakwater Discord, so people can kind of look at that if they're wanting to get involved locally. But yeah, it's been interesting to see all of these diverse problems, and it's sort of exciting to kind of see, oh wow, there's a passion for this, there's a hope for this, there's still a need for the work that we do. The big question is, though, how do we make it sustainable? And that kind of comes to the practical side of why I do what I do, because I truly believe that as much as I appreciate what happened online and what is continuing to happen online with estuary, if we don't find a way to ground it in real person participation, it's never going to be long-term sustainable. And, I maybe I come from this perspective a little bit too, because I didn't come to Paul the normal way. I didn't find him through the algorithm. I actually had a conversation with a friend at a barbecue, like a church evangelical barbecue, as I'm kind of like struggling through these questions. All of a sudden I find someone in the same congregation who's struggling through these same questions that I would never have thought would be struggling through these same questions. And he just kind of goes, "Have you ever heard of Paul VanderKlay?" It's like, "No." He's like, "You might not like him, but maybe just check him out." And I did, and it was just like a breath of fresh air for me. And so there's that sense of how I came to estuary was connected through human connection, and the sense that I was kind of doing estuary-like things in the entertainment world that I was participating in without having a name for it, or even really thinking there was a future for some sort of structure or something for it. And so I just know how valuable it is. The online part is also super valuable because all of a sudden you're connected with people that you could never be connected with before. And, I have such strong friendships with people who I've never even met in real life because of this weird thing I did on the internet. And again, I found my husband. We dated. We met each other during COVID. So we dated for 8 months before we could ever meet each other in person.
Wow.
And then having this grounded now in reality, you just understand that real need for that grounded connection for it to be long-term healthy and sustainable.
Yeah, I kind of wondered one of the things I was thinking about, of course, like the Van Os brothers, they're younger, but like, and I don't know the ages of some of the other people, but in the sustainability, I guess, in a sense, is like, I think it is still going to continue to happen where this isolating, disembodied, parasocial thing that is just, just continuing to happen, offering the off-ramp or a place to begin to have those kind of conversations that people are just like, like you said, like when you're taking in the kind of rage responses, you're just starting to rage and you're not even able to talk to people about it. It's just in your mind. And how to get that pipeline, how to get that, because maybe it is someone goes to church, but maybe even at that church, again, like separating I think, okay, I'll throw this out there. To the extent I think that some of the conversations I've had recently is what is, the question of what church is church just community? Obviously, I know you don't think that, but
Right. No.
but if it is like, well, what's the point of trying to develop, of course, and then you have like evangelical churches that do small group stuff, and there's that aspect of it, but maybe that's centered around Bible study, right? Or something in a sense like theologically directed. There's just this other part of our life in dealing with the the insane amount of information, or like you're in some algorithmic black hole, rabbit trail, whatever you call it, like, and where's a place I can bring this, that it is expected, like the expectation, the hospitality is that this is the expectation, that this is you can bring this as a possibility for conversation. I think that is pretty novel.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because, I was part of small groups when I'm kind of going through this stuff, and I'm pretty much an open book. So I'll put the questions out there and whatever, but there's this recognition that sometimes it's not very productive to kind of put that out there.
Yeah.
In those spaces. It's just not the appropriate place for those things.
Yeah. That's not really the point. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's also a sense of like, I think some people feel uncertain about that because in some ways the Bible study is supposed to help you focus on the goal that is set within the walls of that church, right? And if all of a sudden you're putting out a question that kind of questions the foundation and those things, you're much more likely to immediately get corrected versus kind of be asked, well, what do you mean by that? And have that place to explore it. And I think sometimes you need that place to kind of explore it to help yourself think.
Yeah.
And that was true for me because I at the end of the day, when I'm having these conversations, even when I was a little bit more, let's say, aggressive in having those conversations or kind of anxiety driven in those things, my hope was always to, look for what's true, even if it wasn't what I believed. And so I would argue very strongly for something in order to test the idea, not to be right. I know it didn't always probably come across that way. And there were probably times where I failed and I was just trying to be right. But at the end of the day, I always wanted to be, in line with that capital T truth versus my own perception of it. But where it came to kind of these questions of how do we process this well is when I started doing more evangelical minded missions with this church. And, they would go on college campuses and you do these things. And it was very interesting and helpful in going through those processes, even when I had some doubts about the form and the way that we went about it. But my question was always sort of like, okay, well, we go in pairs of twos on these campuses. What happens if we run into two Mormon missionaries and we sit down together and we've got our capital T truth and they've got their capital T truth and we are trying to share that with each other? How do we understand which person has the right capital T truth? Like, how do we get to that conversation? That was the conversation I was very interested in. And that was some of the things that I was doing before, like in that period from after the Trump election to when I kind of started moving back into churches. Like I would chase Mormon missionaries down the street and be like, hey, tell me what you believe. And they're like, it's probably the first time that's ever happened to them. People are hiding in the windows and I'm chasing them down.
No, I had some guys show up. I had some young men show up last winter and it was freezing outside. And I was like, yeah, I'll talk to y'all for like a few minutes. It's so cold out here. And I was like, y'all just come in. Because at the end of the day, I was, like these guys were 20. I was like almost 40. I'm looking at these guys like, who knows if they really want to be doing this or all these things. I was like, I can at least offer them like, come sit down and my fireplace is on, and it's like, we can just hang out. Like, and I'm not afraid to like, I'm more interested in them. Like what's making you like, how do you feel about what you're doing? And, I don't have to. Yeah.
And it takes some conviction to go out and do something so uncomfortable and share what you
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah.
So, I mean, why not give them the space to listen to it? You know, and I don't know. I just learned a lot from that. And
That's cool. So
that's where I was, sort of that sense of like, I do think that there is something ultimately true, but I have these personal truth beliefs. You have these personal truth beliefs. How do we have conversations about those without placating each other that helps us get closer to that sort of capital T truth?
And sometimes like the levels of which, like, not everything has to go to the metaphysics or the psyche. You know, some things that are on these, you know, carnal or political, like, and just being in a space where it's like, I don't even know where to have this conversation, and I've got these things on my mind, and so trying to create a structure and a network of that opportunity, you know, is, I guess, the estuary movement. And so how has, like, let's talk about the Breakwater Festival. You've been doing this. This is going to be the 5th one, or is that right? You said this is the
fourth.
This will be the 4th one. And
we did
talk about it.
So we've done 3 festivals previously under 2 different names. The first one was the Bridges of Meaning Festival. And after we did that one, we there were some things that made us realize, hey, we should probably have our own identity and kind of keep that separate. And so then we changed it to the Breakwater Festival, and we've been doing that since. And that's what all the other events have been under. And David actually came up with the name, but the idea is these breakwaters are these structures that go out into bodies of water that help protect the shores and the waters from strong currents and waves. And so this idea is like, whatever we're doing is to kind of create that structure that helps make a safer, might not be the right word, but more calm environment, where a more stable environment where we can have these conversations to protect the people within the estuaries and even the communities on the shores that are built with that. So our main focus is to provide support to in-person estuaries, but we're planning to do that in a hybrid model where we're leveraging the online participation and what's grown out of that to help grow the in-person and ground that in the online, in the actual world. And so there's lots of different ways that we're doing that. Some is the festivals, and then some is the exchanges, but we're also thinking about doing sort of these boot camps, where we have these interactive boot camps that help people who want to participate in estuary, but can't necessarily get to an event that we're doing, and kind of be participated in that spirit and other meaning question conversations. And so I can't really give more detail yet about what the plan is for that, but we're in development on some of that now. And I'm really eager to see how we can kind of bridge those things and kind of help them come together.
What have the different conferences looked like?
Yeah. So, so far, all of the festivals have been really shoestring budgets, really community oriented, where we're using community centers that people have connections to. We're cooking all of the food. You know, you've got people helping with the dishes, and we're always bringing people from the community to share what they do, whether it's sort of something in music or, you know, arts. There's all these different things we're trying to kind of create with that. And we bring speakers, obviously, to kind of, because people like that. All of a sudden, there's something kind of special about being able to see somebody you might not necessarily be able to see otherwise. But in that, there's also this sense that our primary focus is that community space. So whatever the speakers bring, we want it to be adding to that community level. And we make sure that there are plenty of estuary breakout sessions where you're not just sitting in a room listening to speakers all day. You get to take what they said and put that into action, and you get to participate in these conversations. And then depending on, we also have different sort of interactive activities that people can participate in. Like last year, the theme was touching grass. So we spent the first morning of Sunday just doing a nature walk, and we all went together and went through these, the Veluwe in the Netherlands, and walked and talked, and it was really beautiful. And so there's all of these different levels of participation. And each year we just try to figure out what makes sense for the community that we're trying to support, and how do we bring people together and put activities on the schedule to make it help what they are looking for and what they are needing in their local space.
So what's it looking like for this year? Y'all have some speakers, and do y'all have, and where at, and all the finer points?
Sure. So this year, the festival is November 7th through the 9th in Kattenburg, the Netherlands. We are having the festival at a venue called the Gelderloonfabriek. It's an arts and cultural event center. It's a full service event center, but it's going to be a really great space for sort of, I think, this sort of thing. They have a lot of little breakout rooms. It's very, yeah, how would you say it? Sort of naturally grungy. It's in this old factory, and
Oh yeah,
it's really
industrial
cozy.
kind of.
It's kind of industrial but warm, and yeah, it's
Naturally grungy as a selling point. Maybe it's industrial kind of like.
Thank you. Yeah, I need you on my marketing team.
I was like, I'm selling naturally grungy right now.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, it's just sort of like, yeah, they do a lot of like concerts and things there. They have a lot of things that they do. So it's sort of, yeah, it feels like this sort of underground thing. It's clean. It's not to say it's not clean. It's clean. It's beautiful. But it's definitely sort of more of that, yeah, industrial aesthetic.
Yeah. Gotcha.
And we're bringing Joseph Foley from the YouTube channel Unsolicited Advice, Nathan Jacobs from the Nathan Jacobs podcast, also a pretty regular face on Paul's channel. And then Jelle Houtman, he is a philosopher and a theologian here in the Netherlands, and he has a project called Europe at Midnight, and he's kind of exploring similar questions that we are about church and participation and all of those things in Europe.
What, Europe at Midnight? So
yes. It's europeatmidnight.com, I think. I can put the link. And the link should be in the bio on the crowdfunding campaign.
Okay.
If not, I'll update it. But yeah, he's Anglican, I believe. And so I just think they're going to be a really interesting group of people to engage with each other and talk with each other. And the theme this year is sort of cross-pollination. We're still working on the wording for the undertitle. But basically, it's sort of this exploration of diversity and how do we navigate that well, and yeah, an increasingly more diverse world, in a pluralistic world, in a globalistic world. And so, yeah, I'm really interested to see how it all shapes out. We're still very much in the early plannings of the talks and all of those things, but we had a speaker theme conversation. Oh, it was just a couple weeks ago, and it was really exciting to hear what they wanted to put on the table and how they engaged. And they all seem really eager to see it all play out in the real person space, particularly Joseph Foley, which he doesn't actually come from the estuary space. He's sort of more of in the agnostic, potentially atheistic kind of cultural commentary space. But he just seemed really eager to see how it would work to see this participate in real life. So I don't know. I'm just really eager to see how it all comes out. The previous years, we never made more than 100 tickets available, and we only sold about half of them. So we would have 50 participants or so. And we were actually really happy with that because it helped us really hone what we do as a festival. It really got us a sense of what spirit do we want to take on when we're doing these events. And yeah, how do we service the people we're actually trying to help? That really helped us kind of figure that out. But as we're growing, we're kind of figuring out that sustainability question for ourselves of how do we make this work? How do we make ticket prices affordable, but also cover the cost? Because many of you probably know these kind of events. Maybe you don't know, but these kind of events are very expensive to put on. And we're very grateful that so far we've about broken even. But unfortunately, that is not that's not an answer to a sustainable business model, particularly because nobody's getting paid to do any of these things. So technically we're running way in the red because there's so much effort by our volunteers and our organization team that they're putting in this, and no one's taking a pay cut or a paycheck or like a cut of what's coming in. So, and we're happy to do it because
the three speakers. So I know Nathan, so he's I guess a philosopher, he's Orthodox.
And and a filmmaker.
And a filmmaker. Okay, so he's got
artist.
And I've seen some of his stuff. And then who was the first guy again that you said that's, I guess, more kind of in the agnostic world?
Yeah, Joseph Foley. He has a YouTube channel called Unsolicited Advice, and he does a lot of commentary videos on, Jordan Peterson and other philosophers and things.
Okay,
and
so
he's appeared a couple times with Alex O'Connor. They're friends.
Okay.
So he's kind of in that space. And he's such a lovely guy and very smart. And yeah, I'm really interested to see how he interacts in the estuary space. I'm always interested to see how people outside of it come in and experience it, because it is something hard to, I think, explain. It's more something that has to be experienced.
And are y'all, is the Europe estuary, do y'all do the protocol? Is that a part of estuary there, the conversation protocol? Like, we could talk about that for a second.
Sure. So at our events, we leverage at least one conversation with an estuary protocol at every event, because we just think it's very helpful. We don't own it. It's John Mendonk's thing, and we try to respect his thing as best as we can and do that. But it's been really helpful in grounding what we do and having these conversations. But we've also introduced other kinds of conversation models before, like Thomas Schreininger in our second festival. He brought a fishball conversation method, and he ran that for us in one of our sessions, and I found it really fun and interesting. And so we allow that to kind of come to with if one of our speakers has something they want to bring that way. We like to play with the idea of how do we have these conversations in different ways. Gotcha. The estuaries we work with, we don't control what they do. We just kind of are supporting them as long as we feel like, it's a healthy thing, and they're trustworthy that we trust them to support those things. So as far as if they do the estuary protocol every time or not, I can't speak to that, because I'm not officially affiliated with them. I'm just kind of supporting them in what they're doing. But from what I've seen, a lot of them do the protocol, maybe not as specifically as John Mendonk might like, but I think they honor it well enough that it brings out really interesting conversations.
Yeah, that's kind of, I was kind of wondering if there's how connected, it's not obviously like the top down thing as much, it's this kind of bottom up distributed, different flavors in a type of thing, but there's kind of this ethos, and wondering if it's, is it a thing enough to continue this pattern and this movement to be helpful in more and more people's lives.
Sure.
So that's go ahead.
That's a big question too, right? Because I think often people see TLC or this little corner and estuary as sort of married to each other. And I actually don't think that's true. I think if you really look at the estuary protocol, it's pretty flexible. It can be applied to a lot of different things. It doesn't have to be applied to some of these weird esoteric or theoretical things that we end up talking about on the internet all the time. And there might be some actually value in bringing fresh blood outside of sort of our insular conversation to open up the doors and, poke our own axioms and think different. Show us where we're not seeing the forest through the trees, if you will. So I think there is something really helpful about estuary and the spirit that is created that can be useful for people adjacent to or outside of what we're doing here in the estuary movement. So my hope is that some of what we do can expand out and can be useful in areas that aren't just looking to attract people who are interested in Paul VanderKlay or Jonathan Peugeot or Vervaeke or any other sort of interesting character you see on the internet, but the person who lives next door that's struggling with the idea of what it means to be a mother, or the guy who's trying to figure out how he has a meaningful job, or all of these things that are meaning questions that have nothing to do with the 4 P's of participation and the specifics of that conversation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's this still, maybe that's the through line is places, well, where meaning becomes something that needs a place to be rediscovered and that's, and obviously, like, if you're coming from a religious standpoint, you say, well, this is ultimate, but sometimes, like, even just getting that, creating a place for where, because at this point in history with religion, there's all sorts of stories that could be told. You could hear Christopher Hitchens versions of these stories and whatever else. And so it's like, how do I, and maybe that's, like you said, that's not really stepping through the doors of the church is not maybe the first place where those conversations might happen for you. It might be. But yeah, so let's get all the stuff out there on the table again. Dates, times, the wins, the wheres for this Breakwater Festival.
Sure. So November 7th through the 9th, 2025, the next Breakwater Festival in Kattenburg, the Netherlands, at the Helderlandfabriek. We have a crowdfunding campaign that we launch right now to help us secure early funds for the festival. And our main incentive is selling pre-sale tickets. And basically what we're doing is selling those pre-sale full festival tickets at cost. So we're not making any profit on it. It really just covers the cost of what it will take to run the festival. And we're doing this so that we can offer the lowest price possible, particularly to people who have been participating in estuary. That's why we're starting some of our promotion very locally and sort of in these TLC channels to give you guys the first chance to grab tickets at this price. And it also helps us because it gets that early momentum and gives us a little breathing room to figure out, okay, how do we make this festival successful, but also the other events that we want to do here in the future so that we can keep going.
That's the crowdfunding.
Yeah.
And that'll be linked down below. Yeah. And so you have a crowdfunding that is buy tickets at cost. And then
we have some other experience as well for people who wanna support a little bit more. Like we have an after party experience, a speaker dinner experience. We also have sort of a retreat style accommodation experience where we'll be organizing stays on a property, and so that people can kind of spend the whole weekend with other people in the festival and having conversations and those things. And great for people who are coming out of town because it's very close to the venue, just a 10-minute drive, 15-minute bike. You could even walk. It would take a little longer, about 40 minutes, but that's available too. And that's just for people who want to help us above and beyond and get a little extra experience for the festival. And then outside of that, we just have some donation tiers because we know that there's probably a lot of people who want to see estuary succeed and can't make it to the festival, but would like to donate without anything in return. And so we're making that available to those who want to take it up. We just know that we wouldn't be here still doing what we did if we hadn't had people who have donated to help fund events or who have seen what we're doing and participated and made it available for others to participate as well. And so, yeah, we just figured it made sense to return to the community and see what support we had and help us fuel that next step as we try to make it bigger and better so that we can support more and more estuaries throughout Europe, but hopefully globally as well.
So if you're out there listening and this corner of the internet and estuary and something like Paul VanderKlay and the likes have had an impact on you, this is a good opportunity to support a work that is kind of downstream from all of this. And so if you want to support, the crowdfunding is also for the sport, but also if you're having a listening and you think it makes sense for you to go and experience this, meet people internationally and hear the speakers, but just have an excuse to go to the Netherlands and have something to like gather that trip around. Or you're in Europe and you've been paying attention to this esoteric stuff and you're still a lurker. This is a great opportunity to not be a lurker anymore and go meet some people that you're going to automatically have some stuff that you can talk about. So, yeah, Cassidy, it's been good today. Is there anything else you want to say about Breakwater 2026?
Yeah, I'll just say that the crowdfunding campaign's August 31st, and it's a fixed goal. So if we don't hit the goal, all the money goes back, and we'll figure out what we do next. There'll probably still be some event, but it might have to change in sort of details. But we're hopeful that we can get there. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Particularly if it's something about finances. We always try to figure out how we can make this as accessible to anybody. So if you really do have struggles or questions, please feel free to reach out to me at our email, contact.breakwater@gmail.com. And if you want to engage more with people who are going to go to the festival, we also have a Discord for Breakwater, and we often do sort of conversations with people who are planning to go to the festival online so that you can kind of meet each other before you get there. And it's kind of bridges the gap of the online and in-person world. And yeah, it's just amazing to see how these online relationships, or even people who know nothing about it and come and experience these things, how these relationships grow. And it's just lovely to see people get excited about these big questions of meaning and take steps into their lives. So I appreciate you for letting me plug it all. And I'm just grateful for everybody who's listening and anybody who supports us in any ways, including like sharing the campaign. That's also really helpful. If you could share it with someone you think might find this interesting or want to come, that's also super helpful. But I think that's it.
Good. Well, it's been great to kind of reconnect, rehash some of these stories, and promote Breakwater 2026. So awesome. Well, we'll see you around the corner somewhere here.
Yeah. I'm always around somewhere.
All right. We'll shut this thing down.
Okay.
Midwestuary 2025, August 22nd through the 24th in Elmhurst, Illinois. A weekend you won't want to miss, with special guests Cale Zelman, Paul VanderKlay, Rod Dreer, Elizabeth Oldfield, John Vervaeke, and Jonathan Pajot. Midwestuary 2025, the Fellowship of the Spirit. Stay tuned for more details. Visit us at midwestuary.com for ongoing updates.
Hi, this is Christian Baxter, and you're listening to Yours Truly, a place we go to think out loud.